We deceived people into believing that the Ukraine could defeat Russia, said the new Secretary of State of the United States of America. Think of the magnitude of that statement. Think of the cost of that statement. Although I see Zelensky is claiming that he never actually got anything like the amount of money that the Biden administration actually sent him. 200 billions sent by Joe Biden to Ukraine, 77 billion received by President Zelensky, or at least that is what both of them are claiming. Whether the Americans never sent the money, whether the Ukrainians never received it, will be one of many of the gigantic skeleton hunts that will undoubtedly now begin in the post-mortem on the Joe Biden administration's relationship with Zelensky. I happen to think that both of these people might be telling the truth, that Joe Biden might think he sent 200 billions, and Zelensky might be telling the truth that he only received 77 billions. The question is, therefore, where did the rest of the money go? On that, we can agree with Zelensky, who's asking that very same question. If Donald Trump uses the nodal, he can destroy the Democratic Party over the subject of Ukraine. I've been saying that for 2 years now, and I wholeheartely believe that the scandal that lies beneath the Ukraine war, the bio labs, the bio war weapons, the Hunter Biden connection, the big guy, and the sons and daughters, sometimes sons and daughters being the same person, of some of the biggest grandees in the Democratic Party. I'm telling you, if you go and search for the big beasts and what they were doing over this last decade in Ukraine, you will find the mother of all scandals. And I very much hope that the Russian authorities, who will pretty soon be in charge of much of Ukraine, will cooperate as wholeheartedly as possible with the incoming American administration's investigation. But think of the magnitude of Rubio's statement. We deceived people into believing that Ukraine could defeat Russia. Think what that means for the 1 million dead Ukrainians. Think what it means for the families of the 1 million dead Ukrainians who were deceived to their deaths, who were deceived to the widowhood of their wives left behind, who were deceived to the orphaning of their children. Think what that statement means to the tens of millions of Ukrainians now living anywhere in the world that they can other than Ukraine, and who will almost certainly never go back there. So if you and your country are now neighbors of substantial numbers of Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war, say hello to them, because they aren't going back anywhere. They are yours to keep. They are yours to live with as well and as happily as you can. And some of them are very fine people, but others are not. Others will be the transmission belt, just like the Kosovans before them, for a huge spike in drug trafficking, in pornography trafficking, in people trafficking, in weapons trafficking. What the Kosovo was to the Western countries earlier in this century, Ukraine is poised to be precisely that.
Watching the world burn, watching the world burn. February 2nd, 2025. Let's get into it. So, now we know it was the DEI policies that caused the shortage in air traffic controllers, according to a lawsuit from Mountain State. And we got a video that talks about that. Let's watch that up front.
So we now know the DEI policies are responsible for the FAA not having air traffic controllers, as they rejected more than 3,000 applicants who scored 100% on the assessment. This according to a lawsuit filed by Mountain State Legal. According to that lawsuit, over the last 3 years under the Biden administration, there have been more than 3,000 air traffic controllers who have applied to work for the FAA and scored 100% on the assessment. That means these people came in, took the test, didn't get a single thing wrong. They were the most qualified you could be. However, under the Biden administration's FAA DEI policies, they also had to take a second test called biographical data, where basically you're just listing your family's racial history. And based on the scores on that test, which again is just laying out your family's racial diversity, 3,000 of the people that scored perfect on the assessment weren't hired. They weren't hired because they weren't diverse enough. They weren't hired because they were white. More than 3,000 of the most highly qualified air traffic controllers you could have. And they weren't hired because they didn't have enough diversity in their family history. That's not only racist as shit. That's not only horrible policy, but it's also insanely stupid, especially when you think about the shortage of air traffic controllers we currently have. So yeah, we can blame DEI for our lack of air traffic controllers. Just another example of us finally getting the consequences of Joe Biden's failures.
Okay. So then we come down and this is Kyle Shepard, and he says exclusive FBI employees who are involved in the inappropriate actions against real Donald Trump have received this notice. And I'm not going to read the whole notice to you. I'll put it in the area up above. But it says, you played a significant role in prosecuting President Trump. Given your significant role in prosecuting the president, I do not believe that the leadership of the department can trust you to assist in implementing the president's agenda faithfully. See complete notice below. Notice of removal from federal service. This letter provides official notice that you are being removed from your position at the Department of Justice and from the federal service effective immediately. And then it just continues on down from there. So Trump's cleaning house, man. Got to give him credit. And, you know, he's got a good point. I mean, people are saying, well, he's getting rid of people that don't like him. Of course he's getting rid of people that don't like him. It's his administration, you know. I mean, and also, I'd have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder if the FBI had raided my house and gone through my wife's underwear. I'd be saying, well, you know what? Let's do a little something. So this is Alex Brainicoat, and he does these, and these are always pretty good. So major weekly news, and we'll get into these, and I'll play his videos where appropriate. So let's see. So number 5, France has been kicked out of Chad and Russia and has been invited in their place. And then we watch that video right now.
France has just been told to fuck off by Chad. After over 60 years, France has been kicked out of Chad, and today they finally withdrew their last troops from their last military base there. And on top of this, Russia has been invited in to take France's place, which is really embarrassing for France. Now, something to know, it isn't actually just Chad that's done this. In fact, a really large number of countries in West Africa have also done the same. In fact, within just the last 12 months, over 5 countries have collectively kicked out over 5,000 French troops from Africa, with those countries being Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Senegal, and the Ivory Coast. Now, according to reports, over 50% of the about 300 million people that speak French actually live in Africa, so France is still going to have a really big influence in Africa. However, with countries like Russia being invited in to take France's place, it certainly shows which side of the world that these countries in Africa are going to be working with. But anyways, you can leave me a follow for some more global news like this.
So that was interesting. Then number 4, the U.S. is withdrawing from Syria and Israel is mad about it. And this is his video.
Israel has just been told to basically fuck off by America. Today, the US announced they're going to be withdrawing their troops from Syria, and Israel says that they need these troops to protect Israel. According to the US, there are over 2,000 American troops in Syria at the moment, and Israel said, quote, "The withdrawal of American forces from Syria will raise significant concerns in Tel Aviv." And something else to note, Israel also said that they will expand their control of Syria if the US does this, basically threatening them. In fact, the Israeli defense minister said that Israel is now going to keep control of most of southwestern Syria, which they invaded after Assad fell last month. And Israel at first said that this was a short-term thing, but now that US troops are going to be withdrawing from Syria, Israel said that it's going to be a permanent thing. Now, this is still a good thing though for the US. If you've watched my videos, you would know that regularly US bases in Syria get attacked. In fact, just last year, a really large number of American troops were injured after they were hit in missile attacks on US bases within Syria. So the US is withdrawing their troops from Syria, and Israel is going to be seizing more control over Syrian land. And you can leave me a follow for some more global news like this.
I didn't know that we were withdrawing from Syria, so that's news to me, and it's good news. We need to get out of Syria. Hell, we need to bring troops home from Germany and put them on the border, in my opinion. I mean, the more troops we get out of the harm's way, let's get them out of there. A new war has started in Congo, and I'm not going to show you that video, but that's interesting, though. I didn't know there was a war going on in Congo. And then the U.S. has threatened BRICS to replace the U.S. dollar. We talked about that in the last video. Trump said he was going to put 100% tariff on BRICS. Speaking of tariffs, oh my God, people have gone crazy. I mean, all over X. I don't know how they got into my feed, but the Canadians are popping up in my feed, and they're all going on about how they hate the United States, and Trump's, they're going to retaliate. And one guy says he's taking all the U.S. wine out of his place, and he's going to throw it out in the street. I mean, just crazy stuff. And anyway, so I kept replying to him, and I'd say, well, look, man. I said, you guys just let your truckers, get bankrupted. You didn't support them when all they were trying to do was not get the jab. Okay. They said, if we're driving a truck, why do we need to get the jab? That was the first thing. And then, of course, they were against the lockdowns that were taking place. And man, that communist Trudeau, man, he went after and froze their bank accounts. Remember all that? I mean, so I got no sympathy for the Canadians, man. I mean, they should have supported those truckers, and they didn't. Because that was their chance. That was their chance to get, recall Trudeau and get a good government in there, and they didn't support him. And then, this was very interesting. I'm going to play this video. It says China has created an artificial sun, and I'll let the video speak for itself. Let's just watch that, and because it's really interesting. I watched that video.
China just created an artificial sun, and it's 5 times hotter than the actual sun. And China said that this artificial sun can, quote, create nearly limitless clean energy. Now, something to note is that this artificial sun is actually a fusion reactor, and China just set the record for the most amount of time that it's been turned on for. In fact, it was powered up on full power for 20 minutes, which is over 4 times longer than the previous world record, which in fact the same fusion reactor set. Now, the reason this is a big deal is because it means that China is going to be able to harness the energy that this thing creates. And obviously, when something is as hot as this is, 5 times hotter than the actual sun, then it creates an almost infinite amount of energy, which is obviously a really powerful thing. Although, something else worth knowing, China did say that they are still very far away from taking this from the stage it's in currently to putting it and using it in their national power grid. In fact, in order to do that, they have to turn it into a nuclear fusion reactor, which is far in the future compared to where they are now. But China did still say that it's going to be used in the future to create huge amounts of energy, so it's still a really big deal. But anyways, you could leave me a follow for some more global news like this.
All right, so let's keep going here. Like I said, whenever I pop out, we're going to, oh, by the way, I've got a real funny video that's going to be so you're going to want to watch this video to the end. Somebody made a parody on the Kennedy, it's Tony DiCarlo. It says how the RFK Jr. hearing went down in less than 3 minutes. It's hilarious. All right, so we're going to play that at the end of the video. So this is Jeroman, a Russian. He says, the war of attrition paid off. The Ukrainian armed forces no longer have tactics other than to plug holes chaotically, throwing battalions, The Economist. If you watched History Legends, I think that's his channel. Anyway, he was going on about how they're forming these battalions, and a normal battalion's, like 4,500 men. And so the Ukrainians are calling like 2,000 men that they're just throwing in there and calling that a battalion. And none of them have had much experience, and they're just throwing them at the front lines. I mean, it's cannon fodder, man. It's hard. I mean, it's horrible when you think about it. But one of the things the Russians pointed out, and whether you want to believe the Russians or not, and I got another story on Russia too, was they're saying that they're killing 50,000 Ukrainians a month, and that the Ukrainians are only able to replace 30,000 with their forced conscription. So they're losing 20,000, and of course those people coming in, they die a lot easier because they don't know what the hell they're doing. So, but I'll just read you a little bit more of this post. Let's finish this up. Ukrainian army was undermined by mass desertion and the unwillingness of people to die for the Zelensky regime. We are throwing battalions into the chaotic disarray, and we hope that we can somehow stop it, says Kupal. Well, that sounds like a Klingon name, doesn't it? Kupal. Okay, well, who commanded a brigade in the east until September. The Ukrainian reserves were hit hard by problems with mobilization and desertion. We just talked about that. We are trying our best to replace our losses on the battlefield. They can throw a battalion of soldiers at a position, like I said, a battalion. They're calling it a battalion, but it's not a battalion. At a position that we have manned with 4 or 5 soldiers, says Colonel Ferdesko, commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Tactical Group in Donbass. The brigades holding the Donbass front line are constantly understaffed, under pressure, and cracking, and the front line continues to retreat, writes The Economist. So I thought that was an interesting post. The other news that was out of Ukraine was there was a HIMARS strike on, and I've heard conflicted, but I know that it was at least 100 people were killed, civilians, and they struck, and it was like one report said that it was old people, and a lot of them like a nursing home type of facility, and so they couldn't get out of harm's way, I guess, if the sirens and everything were, and they killed 100 of them. So that was the latest news. This was an interesting post. DOGE found that the Biden administration was about to send $37 million to the World Health Organization and $50 million to fund condoms in Gaza. And this is the new press secretary. Let's watch her.
Just during this pause, DOGE and OMB have actually found that there was $37 million that was about to go out the door to the World Health Organization, which is an organization, as you all know, that President Trump, with the swipe of his pen in that executive order, is no longer wants the United States to be a part of. So that wouldn't be in line with the president's agenda. DOGE and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars.
All right, so that was that. Now this is wild, and we'll finish up the video right here. Actually, there's one more that we want to do. Biden and Blinken to the electric chair. This is RT, Russian television, reporting on this. The Russian parliament heads warns Biden and henchmen now tried to assassination attempts on Trump, Orban, Fico, and Putin. And I mean, so they're making the accusation. So I imagine they're going to take it to the International Criminal Court. And so Biden, they better not travel out of the United States. Of course, Biden, he won't. I mean, he's too old. But anybody in his family, that is. But anyway, let's watch that video.
Обратимся в Конгресс Соединенных Штатов Америки с просьбой провести расследование этой ситуации. Она чревата глобальным конфликтом, обсуждение вопроса убийства президента любой страны. В данном случае президента Российской Федерации. Мы должны отнестись к этому серьезно. Тем более мы с вами видим, было покушение на Трампа, на премьер-министра Словакии Фица. Была попытка покушения на Орбана, ее предотвратили. И все это вокруг администрации Байдена и его приспешников. Недопустимо, чтобы такие вопросы обсуждались на государственном уровне с участием госсекретаря, президента Соединенных Штатов Америки. Это о чем говорит? Во главе страны, которая себя считает образцом демократии, стоят обыкновенные бандиты, убийцы. Это преступление. Пускай докажут, что это страна демократии. Пускай Байден отправляется вместе с Блинкеном на электрический стул. Вот тогда весь мир увидит. Это демократия. А если замолчат, заволокетят, ну тогда рот не открывайте и не учите никого. Что мы относимся к этому серьезно. И сделаем все, чтобы защитить президента и нашу страну. Потому что любые вызовы и угрозы мы рассматриваем как угрозу нашей страны. А это значит, должен быть ответ жестким и незамедлительным.
All right, so that was them. And then the last one, this is a nice picture. I'll put the picture up above while I'm reading this. Photo of beautiful water flow that I just opened in California. Today, 1.6 billion gallons, and in 3 days, it will be 5.2 billion gallons. Everybody should be happy about this long-fought victory. I only wish they listened to me 6 years ago. There would have been no fire. Donald J. Trump. And then here's one more. This is, the 25% tariff. We already talked about that on Canada and Mexico. And 10% on China. The 10% on China is not going to matter. Well, this is interesting. I'll just read this to you. Breaking: Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth just kicked the New York Times, NBC, NPR, and Politico out of their Pentagon press offices and give space to the New York Post, Breitbart, OANN, and the Huffington Post. Hegseth must be attempting to set the world record for the most transformational changes made in a single month. Wow. All right, that's it for today's video. Peace out. Stay free.
Sir, do you think that men cannot have babies? I can see why they call you Pocahontas, because you're really poking me. Mr. Kennedy, do you support what is on these onesies? Look at these onesies. Available for $26.99, which is actually a pretty good deal. I can't say that I do, though. I think you would look pretty good in that, Bernie, because you're a little baby.
My great-grandfather had a saying about people like you. He used to say,
Hey,
Mr. Kennedy, I heard you say that vaccines can cause autism.
the science is not clear on that, but I can confirm whatever vaccines you took have caused full-blown mental retardation.
that is racist.
Why don't you go back in your wigwam and beat the crap out of your husband? You know what? Forget a dream catcher. We need a bullshit catcher to filter out all the crap she's throwing at me right now. Mr. Kennedy, do you support what is written on this thong? Available at thonglife.com for $20.99. Actually a pretty good deal. I'm wearing two of them, actually.
That is triggering.
You look like the type of guy who goes down on his wife while wearing a COVID mask.
That is not true. I grab her and look how I grab her boobs. 2 hands, nice and gentle. Of course, I sanitize them.
Booster Canada. I've gotten all 47 booster shots. Sure, ow, my neck is paralyzed, but that's unrelated. Excuse me, I also poop my pants a few times a day. I don't think that's related to you. I'm anti-mask, but I really would love to put a mask on right now.
Are you willing to say, right here, under oath, that Lizzo is not a skinny, beautiful woman?
Lizzo is definitely full of beauty. We'll leave it at that. Mr. Kennedy, do you support what is written in tattoos on Puff Daddy's arm? I believe he goes by P. Diddy. Sorry, P. Diddy.
And what about this woman who was not allowed into a lift because of her weight?
I think we should have a new rideshare app for morbidly obese people, and we can call it Forklift.
That is transphobic and racist.
You're out of order.
Racist.
Out of order.
Transphobic.
Oh, I'm very triggered. Hey, that's very
very mean.
Do you believe that trackers respond to autism?
Somebody give me